debt. When I look back, it becomes clear to me that the signs of trouble were always there, like fine cracks gradually spreading across the perfectly smooth surface of our marriage. Now they seem obvious to me, almost blatant, but then I was too blind, too confident in our life and its stability to notice anything. You know, there is an expression as old as time: love is blind. And in moments like these, you realize how brutally true it is. For 18 years, I shared my life with a woman whom I considered my other half, my support, the person without whom I could not imagine a single day. But as it turned out, she was not at all who she said she was. She turned out to be unfaithful, frivolous, prone to vicious hobbies and secret intrigues. Walking. This word cuts the ear like a knife on glass, but it most accurately describes her essence, which I, blinded by love and trust, refused to see. And to be honest, there really were signs. Little things that seemed unimportant to me back then. Late returns home, which were explained by work or meetings with friends. Telephone conversations that ended when I appeared. A look, sometimes distant, sometimes too animated after someone's messages. Now I understand that many around knew about this before me. Neighbors, mutual friends, even casual acquaintances seemed to have guessed what was happening behind my back. But my blindness, this is not just a metaphor. This is a state in which you close your eyes to what you don't want to see, to what contradicts your idealized picture of life. This is voluntary deafness, when all alarm bells are drowned out in the confidence that everything is fine, that a loved one is simply not capable of betrayal. And this blindness is real. It becomes a barrier that obscures the truth until everything collapses with a crash from which there is no escape. Karen was a true Southerner, with a soft, melodious accent and a habit of speaking quietly, as if afraid of disturbing someone's peace. She was born and raised in the heart of the South, in a small provincial town where everyone knew each other, and traditions and way of life were passed on from generation to generation. She was the middle child in a family of 5 children between 2 older brothers, strong and protective, and 2 younger sisters, to whom she helped with homework and often gave her toys or clothes. Their family lived modestly, but despite this, the house was always filled with life, noise, the laughter of children, and the eternal conversations of parents about how to make ends meet. Karen's father was a mason. He worked from dawn to dusk, earning just enough to provide everyone with the basic necessities. They were not poor, there was always food on the table and a roof over their heads, but there was no question of any luxury. Karen and her siblings never had the trendy clothes or the latest toys that their peers talked about at school. They learned to enjoy little and not ask for more. This life taught her to take care of everything she has, to be grateful for the slightest gifts of fate, and not to dream of the impossible. But deep down, I think that these years, when they lived as if on the edge of an abyss, left a mark on her. Being the middle daughter in a large family is always a struggle for attention, for recognition, for your small share of light under this big family sky. When I first met Karen, she seemed modest and surprisingly shy. She didn't have the brash confidence you sometimes see in people who grew up in abundance, and that fascinated me. Her insecurities showed in the way she avoided long glances or hid her hands behind her back when she spoke. She rarely raised her voice and always seemed ready to retreat, to give in. This touched me to the core. I remember how unusually natural she was, as if she was not at all aware of her beauty, this amazing combination of soft features, thick dark hair, and deep eyes that reflected all her emotions. It was as if she didn't know that she deserved something more, that she could allow herself to dream. God, how I regret now that I once changed this, that He brought that confidence into her world, which over time became something completely different. At the time we met, Karen was a young brunette with thick, shiny dark chestnut hair that fell in soft waves over her shoulders. Her blue eyes resembled a clear southern sky, deep and pure, with some special, almost childish light that touched to the depths of the soul. She was short, only 5 feet 4 inches, about 163 centimeters, and weighed perhaps no more than 115 pounds, about 52 kilograms. Her slender physique seemed fragile, but there was a hidden grace in it, as if she combined softness and inner strength. As for her figure, to be honest, I have always paid attention to women with beautiful curves, especially curves in the lower part of the body, and Karen, despite her small breast size maximum A, compensated for this with a really well-defined ass. It was as if she was created to attract glances, even if she herself didn't know it. I remember how, when I saw her for the first time, I mentally noted this contrast, the modesty in her demeanor and the natural attractiveness that was absolutely unobtrusive, but that made it even more catchy. Her face was sweet, with soft features and a natural blush on her cheeks, as if she had just spent time outdoors. However, she, like the rest of her family, had a slightly weak jawline, which made her facial profile appear slightly prominent and her smile a little toothy. But Karen's teeth were straight and well-groomed, and this feature did not make her any less attractive. Rather, on the contrary, it gave her appearance a certain memorable individuality, adding a charm that was impossible not to notice. A weak jaw, she later admitted to me, had always been her little insecurity. She even mentioned at one point that it was a family trait that got her into trouble as a child. So when we were able to pay our medical bills, that was the first thing she wanted to change. I remember us discussing this. I said that she was beautiful and just the way she was, but Karen was determined. And when the operation was over, her face really changed. It became more expressive, more sophisticated, and from just a sweet girl, she turned into a real beauty. I wasn't the only one who noticed this. Her new appearance began to attract more attention, glances, compliments, interest from people who previously seemed not to notice her. This should have been a wake-up call for me, a warning that life might be changing in the wrong direction. But my blindness, as I already said, was stronger than any hints. I simply rejoiced at her happiness, not suspecting that along with this happiness changes would burst into our lives that I could not control. You see, it always seemed strange to me that Karen reacted to my compliments in a way, too restrained. It was as if they did not reach her completely, did not penetrate deeper than the level of a polite answer. I remember telling her, "That new hairstyle suits you so well, you look amazing," expecting to see joy in her eyes, or at least a little excitement. But instead, he received only a light, "Thank you, dear," said with a warm, but somehow mechanical smile. Sometimes she would add a little kiss on the cheek, and that would be it. The same picture was with clothes, be it her new dress that emphasized her figure or jeans that fit perfectly on her hips. I could sincerely admire her choice, comment on how good she looked, but it seemed that my words meant nothing to her. Of course, it was a little tiring, especially when you are really trying to express your feelings, to show that you see something special in her, that she is more than just a wife for you, she is your muse, your ideal. But the strangest thing was the difference in her reaction to other people's compliments. When someone else, especially a man, said something nice to her, she seemed to blossom before her eyes. Her face glowed with happiness, her eyes began to shine, and her voice sounded a little higher than usual when she responded with gratitude. Even if it was some casual acquaintance who noticed her new hairstyle or complimented her shoes, she reacted as if she had been given the whole world. I couldn't understand what was going on. It was like an unsolved mystery that bothered me more and more. I tried to explain this to myself, thinking that perhaps she was taking my words for granted. After all, I'm her husband, I'm around every day, and she's probably just used to the fact that I'll say nice things to her. Maybe in her eyes, this did not require any special gratitude, because from me, it sounded natural, like a familiar part of our life. However, this thought did not bring me complete relief. I was sickened by the feeling that my sincere words, my attempt to show her how much I admired her, were colliding with an invisible wall. And this wall, it kept growing, distancing us from each other. At the time, I didn't even realize how important these moments were. Then it seemed to me that this was just a trifle, a trait of her character that I should accept, as you accept minor imperfections in the person you love. But now, looking back, I see that this was another warning sign that I simply turned a blind eye to. At first, her joy at random compliments wasn't such a big deal. It just lifted her spirits. But over time, she began to get used to this attention and even expect it. When we paid off all our debts, Karen decided to have a breast augmentation. Although, at the very beginning, She presented it as a desire to do something for me. She asked, "Would you like it if my breasts were bigger?" If you've never experienced this, consider yourself lucky. I immediately said that nothing in her body needed to be changed, improved, or altered. I said that I think she is sexy and beautiful just the way she is. Then she changed tactics. "Do you mind if I do this for myself?" Well, what can we say? I still thought it was an unnecessary expense and an unnecessary risk for something she didn't need. And of course, she did it. After the operation, she actually seemed more confident, and when she fully recovered, I must admit that the sex was simply amazing. There were some unexpected benefits for me. For example, she became less shy during sex. I know it sounds strange even now, but when I look back, I see clear changes. In the outside world, her new breasts were much more useful to her than to me. During the whole process of reconstructing her jaw and growing her self-esteem, I could still tell myself that she was just getting more beautiful and getting a few compliments. Most people behaved correctly, and the comments were quite pleasant. But the new breasts made her sexier, more desirable, and, frankly, hotter. The compliments she received about her jaw were much easier to accept than the ones she received after surgery. These comments often crossed the line of decency and almost always contained sexual innuendo. What was even worse was that she absolutely loved it. New dresses and blouses almost always had more revealing necklines. Dresses became shorter and shorter, and since she was not bothered by the attention of men, they became more and more bolder. People I considered friends flirted with her openly, and if I said something, it turned out that I was the bad one. One night we were at a club, and I noticed that Karen always had a bottle of beer in her hand, even though she didn't have her purse or any payment from me. I asked her where she got the beer from, and she replied with a smile that she showed the bartender her breasts for every bottle. The next day we talked about it for a long time, but I knew that she didn't hear me. She absolutely loved it. When she was drinking, I had to keep my eyes on her. Otherwise, some guy would just ask to show her breasts, and she would happily agree. Her behavior began to frankly embarrass me sometimes, and when I told her about it, she suggested that I just go to clubs alone so that I wouldn't feel uncomfortable. Yeah, like that was an option. As her flirting and showing off became more frequent, so did the number of our quarrels. It bothered me that men were openly staring at her right in front of me, so I asked her to slow down and show me some respect. I told her I loved her and understood how much she liked the attention, but she needed to understand how it affected me. And for a while, she calmed down. She still dressed sexy, still flirted, but in a more discreet manner. She still enjoyed the attention, but I was no longer aware of her antics. We fought less often and life seemed to be getting better again, at least outside the bedroom. And then she met Rachel. Rachel began working with Karen about a year after her breast augmentation surgery and about 6 or 7 months after Karen finally moderated her behavior. I immediately had a bad feeling as soon as I met Rachel, but I knew that this battle was already lost. Karen took on the role of mentor to this new girl and felt that she had to help her not only get used to the job, but also get used to the new city. This inevitably led to them having dinners together, shopping trips, and then so-called bachelorette nights. I'll tell you honestly, having a single friend is the biggest threat to a marriage, whether on the male or female side. And if this friend is young, very attractive, and a little crazy, then the risk becomes simply colossal. Rachel was all of this in a triple dose. The first couple of bachelorette parties weren't all that bad. Karen got home at a reasonable hour, and although she had been drinking, she didn't appear drunk. I knew she was flirting and dancing because after those nights she literally tormented me in bed. But who would complain about that? Then such exits began to happen more and more often and end later and later. We started quarreling over this. I was sure that her new friend was a bad influence, but then I didn't know how much. I tried to ask Karen general questions about her activities, but she immediately became withdrawn. Something was clearly wrong. I needed to know what was going on, but no one was going to tell me. So I did what any man would do in that situation. I followed them one night. They went to a club that Karen had previously called too youthful for us. This meant that the audience there was much younger than us. However, for Rachel, it was the right place. And Karen, being a little older, still wouldn't cause problems. But I would definitely stand out there. Gritting my teeth, I waited a moment until they went inside, and then followed them. The club was quite busy, especially around the dance floor, but I managed to take a seat at the bar, from where I could see almost the entire room. Maybe 20 minutes passed after they went inside, and then I saw them. They were sitting in a booth near the dance floor with two men. Rachel was next to a blonde guy who looked like a surfer, and Karen was sitting across from her with a dark-haired, dark-skinned man. Everything was wrong in this picture. The alarm bells were ringing in my head so loudly that I could barely hear the music. I wanted to go over and make a scene, but I knew it would cause a big fight. If she was just flirting and dancing, we could talk about it later. But if it was a date or something more, our marriage will not survive. So I decided to wait and see, hoping for the best. I saw the worst. We didn't have to wait long. The first song Karen came out to dance with this guy was a slow one. They started out simple, but after a minute, it started to go beyond boundaries. Rachel and her boyfriend weren't any better, but I didn't care about them. My problem was Karen. I understood that something needed to be done, but I didn't want to ruin everything right away. I needed to give her a chance to stop before she went too far, so I decided to try to distract her. While they returned to the table, I quickly wrote a message. "Sorry about our fight. I love you." From my place at the bar, I saw her look at her phone and read the message. However, after that, she simply put the phone back on the table without reacting. This was already a bad sign. I decided to try again and wrote, "Please come home or at least call me. We need to talk." I waited again, watching. A few minutes later, she started typing something on her phone. I held my breath, hoping for the best. The answer was, "I'll be home later, having fun with the girls." After that, she turned to her beau and kissed him. Even if they hadn't slept together up to this point, it was obvious that this would definitely happen that night. My world was crumbling right in front of me. I knew that after everything I had seen, our marriage was doomed. Karen has crossed a line that cannot be crossed if you want to save the relationship. Even if there had been no physical betrayal, I could no longer trust her. And without trust, there is no marriage. The next dance was fast, but somehow even worse than the first. People in the club started pointing at them and laughing, but Karen wasn't bothered at all. At the end of the dance, she and Rachel kissed each other. They then returned to the table and Karen continued to kiss her young beau. People around began to whisper and point at them. It was a humiliating scene, and I knew I couldn't just stand by any longer. I approached their table. Her eyes widened in shock as I began to pull off the wedding ring that had been passed down in our family from her finger. Her ring was now in my pocket. I then took off my own ring and threw it on the table in front of her. Karen sat there in shock, trying to process what had happened, but I didn't want to say anything more. My car, a Ford Taurus show, allowed me to quickly leave this place behind. I drove several miles before her call came through my phone. I rejected it. It was already too late to talk. I returned home, or rather, to the house that used to be our home, and hastily threw into a bag the things that I might need in the next couple of days. Not even 15 minutes had passed before I was already on my way to some other place. As I entered the freeway on ramp, the phone rang, and I pressed the speakerphone button to reject the call. Of course it was her. I pressed the power button on the phone and turned it off. If I spoke to her now, things would get even worse. All I knew was that I needed to be alone and think. My mind is analytical. All my life people have told me that they are jealous of my ability to solve problems so quickly. But it's actually a curse because my mind just can't ignore the problem. I won't find peace until I solve it. So, while the machine in my head is sorting through data and moving puzzle pieces, I drive without a clear direction. The problem is that no matter how hard I try to put the pieces together, they just won't fit. My mind understands what's going on. It's obvious the pieces representing anger and pain are too big to fit, and the piece representing love has shrunk a lot. The detail denoting trust has disappeared completely, and you can't just look for it under the table. Ah, that's the problem. Anger and pain, these two dark feelings, can easily fill the voids left by love and trust. When trust disappears, it takes away with it calmness, confidence, that inner harmony that unites two people. But love remains, even if it has weakened, even if it has been wounded. This is not a switch that you can simply flip, turning off all feelings and forget. She clings to the deepest corners of the soul, to those memories when everything was fine, to moments of happiness that you cannot erase. I loved her the entire time we were together. Love did not leave me, even when I was angry, even when the pain and resentment became almost unbearable. I loved her when anger flared in my heart because of the way she behaved with others, because of her seemingly indifference to what was happening between us. I loved her, even when the scene at the bar where she flirted with the bartender while showing off her breasts stuck in my head like a knife in my back. This episode still stands before me like a shadow, but love did not fade away then, and did not fade away later. I loved her when she ignored my sincere compliments, the ones I uttered while looking into her eyes, hoping to see reciprocal warmth in them. It hurt me to see how she blossomed from the praise of strangers, while my words bounced off her like glass marbles, leaving no trace. But even then I loved her herself, the one I remembered as a shy girl, the one who once looked at me with admiration. I loved her, even when it seemed to me that she had changed, that those warm feelings that united us at the beginning were now just a memory. Sometimes I could hate her behavior, harshness, indifference, flirting with others. Sometimes I did not understand her actions. I could not find an excuse for her actions. But he loved. Love did not disappear. She lived somewhere deep, like a quiet fire that never goes out completely, even when it seems there is no more fuel left. Love is something complex, much more than just words or gestures. It includes forgiveness, understanding, struggle with oneself, and even pain. I loved her not because she was perfect, but because of who she was to me, the one with whom I shared years of my life, the one with whom I laughed and cried, with whom I made plans for the future. Even when she hurt me, even when I felt our connection weakening, the love remained. She was like an unbreakable thread that connected us, even when everything else was falling apart. Love is not only about memories of good times, but also the ability to overcome difficulties together. This is the problem my mind is trying to solve. The pieces don't fit, but they always fit together before, so it tries hard to make them fall into place. I keep driving, following the headlights until my mind stops working. I see happy moments from the past as if they are passing before my eyes. This helps relieve pain and anger in the short term. But after each such relief, the details become even greater. Gradually, the real world reminds me of itself, and I understand several things. Firstly, I urgently need to find a toilet. Secondly, the car needs gas. Thirdly, I have no idea where I am. And finally, I'm lucky that I haven't killed anyone yet in my almost zombie state. This time luck was on my side, and I found the three things I needed most right now: a gas station to fill up my tank and empty mine, standard chain hotels, and a liquor store. I checked into one of the hotels, buying a large bottle of rum along the way. I know myself and my mind. As I already mentioned, until the puzzle is completed, I will not find peace. But now the pieces don't fit and won't for a long time. So the only option is to knock down all the inputs so that the mind shuts down from the overload. In a way, it worked, because the next thing I remember is being very confused, waking up to find myself in an unfamiliar room. For a few happy moments, I had only one mystery: how I got here. But once the pieces of this puzzle began to come together, the picture became dire. The images followed each other. First she dances with him, then she kisses him. These pictures were spinning in my mind. I started crying and couldn't tell how long it lasted. I only know that long into the morning, I finally got to the shower and finally got dressed. I desperately needed coffee. My head was pounding from the rum, and I knew that I needed to eat something, even if it seemed to make little sense. Like many places in the South that have hotels, there was a Waffle House nearby. The coffee was a huge relief, and the rich eggs and bacon helped soak up the remaining alcohol. In the harsh light of a new day, I have come to several conclusions. They were terrible, but there were no other options. The first thing I realized was that I needed to call her and start looking into this unpleasant matter. I already knew that there were only a few possible scenarios. One, she admits how badly she messed up and doesn't try to justify her behavior. She will actually accept the blame and ask for mercy, admitting her mistakes. Or second, she will follow the classic scenario of all cheaters, trying to minimize both the problem and the damage. When I turned on the phone to call her, I considered the odds. Although I hoped for the first option, I knew her too well and understood that it would most likely be the second. There were many missed calls and messages from her on the phone. The analyst in my head noted that the first call from my home phone came shortly after my precipitate departure. I even smiled a little, thinking that I had ruined her evening before the analyst suggested that he might have spent the night at our house since I was missing. Mistrust is a cruel companion. The messages and calls did not stop until dawn. By then, I was already asleep. I decided to wait until we talked before listening to the recordings of her calls. It probably wouldn't make much of a difference. Her phone rang, and she answered after the first ring. "Oh God, are you okay? I tried to call you all night, but you didn't answer. I wasn't in the right state, Karen. I couldn't talk to you without losing control. I understand, and I'm sorry. Okay, Karen, I had time to think and calm down my anger a little. I'll give you a chance to say whatever you want." She started with the classic excuse. "It's not what it seems." "So you want to say that when I approached your table and saw, I somehow misinterpreted it. I understand what it was supposed to look like, but I didn't know what was happening. I drank a lot. Maybe they put something on me. I've been watching you for a long time before this, Karen. He didn't force you to do anything, and you didn't drink that much." There was a pause before she asked, "How long were you there?" "I came almost immediately after you. I looked for a long time, too long, Karen." I told her that I saw her ignore my first attempt to save our marriage, and then lie to me in response to the last message. I said that even though I was sure she had already slept with him, we might have a chance if she would just stop and come back to me. But seeing how she dismissed me and immediately went to her lover destroyed any possibility of this. She began to cry, and for a second my resolve wavered, but only for a second. The analyst noted that she never denied sleeping with him. Then she started using the entire hit parade of cheating excuses, starting with that old hit. It didn't mean anything. If she really believes this, then we don't stand a chance. Her loyalty and my trust in her meant everything to me. If sleeping with another man meant nothing to her, then we're screwed. It was supposed to make her feel ashamed so she would stop. In fact, the first time she kissed another man or did any of the long list of things a married woman should not do, it should have stopped her long before we got to this point. When I expressed this opinion to her, she did not have a good answer, and she moved on to the next excuse in her arsenal. "I never meant to hurt you," I replied. "You didn't mean to hurt me, is it true? And what could convince you that I would not be hurt by what you did? You can say you didn't mean to hurt, but that's just an excuse to ease your conscience." After a short pause, she issued the following standard phrase, "But I don't love him, I love you." "You don't love him, do you love me? It's just funny. Oh, I can believe that you don't love him. He's too young to be a permanent part of your life. But about the fact that you love me, you can say this as much as you like, but your actions say otherwise. No one who cares about another person, let alone loves one, would do what you do. Sorry, but I don't even partially believe this. But it was just sex." "Just sex? Did you really say that?" "Yes, this is not just sex. It is a fatal blow to trust, to love. If you think that sex with another man is not important, then what even matters? What would you say if I admitted that I slept with my assistant? Would that be serious for you?" I realize how stupid that sounded. "Please give us one more chance. I promise nothing like this will happen again." "Do you promise? Maybe it's true, or maybe not. How can I be sure?" I'll have to watch your every move for a long time, if not forever. No, that won't work. I will neither be a jailer nor a cuckold. You've destroyed my trust in you, and there's no going back. What made you do this in the first place? Although I probably don't even want to know. A long silence on her part made me understand that she knew I was right. I only heard her sobs until she finally said, "It was just something I needed to do. Something I had to try once. Something you needed to do. Is it like chickenpox once in a lifetime? Or like seasonal allergies, will they come back again? It's just like, I'll never do that again. You felt like you needed to try this once. I will be afraid for the rest of my life that you will feel that need again. Sorry, but this doesn't work. Everything just got out of control. This was supposed to be a one-time adventure, and then everything would return to normal. You weren't supposed to know about this. I shouldn't have found out. So this makes everything okay. While I don't know, can you sleep with anyone and it won't cause any harm? Nonsense, pure and simple. This brings us back to your words that you didn't mean to hurt me. It's just a lie you tell yourself to make everything seem okay. Honey, now I understand how much I ruined everything. I know we can get through this. I don't want to lose you. Do you know we can get through this? Her voice sounded almost pleading, as if she wanted to grab the last fragments of what could still be saved. But her words, which sounded like hope, actually awakened rage in me. Finally, something I can agree with. Yes, we will indeed get through this, but not in the way she imagines. We won't work on the relationship. We won't try to build something together as a couple again. We will get through this, but as two people now on separate paths, alone again. You don't want to lose me, I continued. There was no longer warmth in my words, only cold and hard truth. What do you think happened when Rachel appeared in your life? You think that everything started just now, but I know that everything ended already then. I lost you the moment you allowed another man into your life and into your bed, and you lost me the same way when you made that choice. Do you think it is possible to return what was? We're done. We ended as a couple the very moment you first betrayed what bound us together. I didn't fully understand this before. I guess I tried to find excuses, to explain your behavior, to convince myself that all this could be survived, that maybe it could still be fixed. But now, after last night, I see everything completely clearly. I can't fool myself anymore by pretending we have a chance. I think I limited your freedom too much, I continued, my voice becoming harsh, almost sarcastic. And now, finally, you got it. Rachel showed you how to have fun again, right? She probably reminded you of what it's like to live without obligations, without responsibility, without a hint of respect for what we've been trying to build all these years. So now you have complete freedom. Do whatever you want, whatever you please. I paused, breathing in and out to control my anger. Every word I spoke resonated with pain in my heart, but I knew I couldn't stop. This was the moment of truth, and she had to hear it to the end. We're done as a couple, you know. You destroyed everything that connected us. You not only destroyed trust, you destroyed the very foundations of our life together. And now divorce is all that awaits us. There is no other way. This is not a temporary quarrel, not a crisis that can be overcome. This is the end. I looked at her, but I didn't see anything in her eyes that could change my mind. There might have been some regret, but not enough for it to mean anything. Now you are free, I said, trying to put into my voice all the despair that was boiling inside me. Free to have fun the way you want. Do it for your health, because now you don't owe me anything anymore. We're done. After these words, she began to scream as if in pain, and I pressed the button to end the call. Then I turned off the phone. For me, the only thing ahead was the divorce procedure. She said everything she could, and I said mine. For her, it didn't seem to be anything serious, but for me, it was everything. Of course, something like counseling and therapy could have been tried, but all this could have been beneficial only before she gave herself to another man. Her thoughts on this matter, of course, were different. She tried to fight the divorce in different ways. First, through the court, she managed to obtain mandatory family counseling, but it was a waste of time and money. Even the consultant told her that there was practically no chance of regaining my trust. She argued over terms and agreements just to drag out the process until I agreed to sign whatever option she offered. She cried, begged, and promised anything if only I would give us another chance. But what does a promise made by a liar matter? She never understood the main thing that I tried to explain to her over and over again. Things simply cannot work without trust. I still loved her, probably always will, but I could never trust her again. Another huge problem, like the elephant in the room, was that although I still loved her, or at least the memory of her, I could not erase these images from my memory. There will never be a time when we try to make love again without her face reminding me of that night at the bar, bringing back all the pain. That's how it all happened. No burn the bitch, no scorched earth policy, no elaborate plan for revenge. I didn't fly into a rage. I didn't destroy and break everything around. I didn't create scenarios in which the pain she caused me would be returned to her 100-fold. Because none of this would change the facts. No loud words, no actions aimed at getting revenge could erase what had already happened. She still gave herself to him, betrayed me, crossed the line beyond which nothing remained of our past. And her friend. Oh, how I don't want to think about her. She wasn't just an observer. She helped Karen choose this path. She supported, pushed, convinced that it was normal, that it was her right to seek happiness on the side. I could blame her, I could hate her for it, but what difference would it make? All these thoughts, all these emotions, anger, pain, despair do not correct anything. They can't turn back time, they can't erase these moments, they can't force Karen to make a different choice. All this will remain the same, no matter how hard I try. I thought about it a lot, too much. I imagined how I could come up with something insidious to take revenge, something that would make her feel the same pain that I feel. Revenge is a sweet word, but a bitter taste. I realized that the only thing that would change if I followed this path was myself. Everything that was good in me, everything that was bright, will be destroyed by this poison. You think revenge will bring relief, but that's a lie. You yourself will become a monster that burns everything around you, including yourself. You will stop being yourself. You will turn into a madman who is chasing justice where it can no longer exist. And then, when you are left in the ashes, you will understand that the only one who truly suffered from your revenge is yourself. That's how I chose a different path. Not because I forgave her, and certainly not because I stopped feeling the pain, but because I didn't want to become a monster. I didn't want to let her betrayal rob me of everything, including myself. Karen. My first face is the one I have worn most of my life. It wasn't ugly, but it wasn't beautiful either. At least that's what I thought when I looked at myself in the mirror every day. Like too many women, I have always been fixated on my perceived shortcomings. To be completely honest, I would say I was pretty at most. I liked my eyes and my nose was small and feminine. But whenever I looked in the mirror, especially when I was putting on lipstick, I felt like my mouth just didn't look right. I have always had a weak jaw. Everyone in our family had this feature. This, of course, was not too noticeable, but due to the incorrect bite, I looked a little snaggle-toothed. Since childhood, I dreamed of fixing this and becoming more attractive. I grew up in a family with 5 children, where attention and money were always in short supply. It was not easy, especially when teenage complexes and first sympathy for boys began to appear. At school, I was never that girl that all the boys looked at. I remained in the shadows, often feeling insecure about my appearance and lack of nice clothes. This affected my relationships. Boys were interested in me until someone brighter appeared nearby. Such a temporary relationship taught me to be wary and reserved. When Doug showed up, everything changed. He was handsome, charming, and kind. But the main thing is that he paid attention only to me, even when that girl was nearby. He made me feel special. We started dating, fell in love, and eventually got married. Our life was filled with joy and adventure. He was not just a husband for me, but a person who sincerely loved me for who I am. A few years after my wedding, I decided to have surgery to correct my jaw. It was hard, expensive, and painful, but the result exceeded all my expectations. My face changed, and my life changed along with it. I began to feel more confident and began to pay more attention to my appearance. People noticed these changes, and for the first time I felt like I was the center of attention. The feeling was intoxicating. Soon I decided to make another change breast augmentation. Doug wasn't thrilled with the idea, but ended up supporting me. The result again met my expectations. I felt even more attractive. But with this change came new temptations. I began to dress more impressively, enjoying the attention of others. At work, I met Rachel, who became not only a friend for me, but also something of a guide to a new life. She was a bright and confident woman who always attracted attention. We began to spend a lot of time together, and our evening trips to bars turned into something more than just friendly get-togethers. In her company, for the first time, I felt the freedom to be myself and not hide my femininity. Looking back, I see how I gradually lost touch with who I used to be. The desire to be the center of attention, to be desired, became something of an addiction for me. These changes affected my relationship with Doug. He remained the same loving and devoted husband, but I began to move away without realizing it. This story is about my mistakes and how internal complexes and the desire to be better can lead away from the most valuable things in life. Now I understand that external changes do not bring true happiness if you do not deal with what is inside. Then Doug and I started fighting about these outings, about Rachel being a bad friend, and about ourselves. I should have realized that I should have stopped right away. Doug's mind is a curious thing. I've known him long enough to understand how he works. The problem is that I thought I knew the secret. If you don't hit the trigger, his mind won't react. But as soon as he thinks about something, he will not calm down until he deals with the problem. Most of the damage was done before we fought over Rachel. No, I didn't have sex with another man, at least not fully, but there were too many things that I knew crossed the line. And yes, Rachel and I crossed this line together more than once too. I won't lie anymore. I knew what I was doing behind his back was wrong. The problem is that it was too easy to forget in the moment. It was all too easy to convince himself that if he didn't find out, it wouldn't hurt him. Besides, the only person I actually slept with at the time was Rachel. Isn't it every man's dream to see two women together? With men showering me with compliments and Rachel pushing me to do it, I simply didn't have any room in my head to worry about Doug or our relationship. I should have realized that trying to avoid answering when Doug asked me about our evenings was stupid. A half answer is worse than no answer, but any of them would be enough to awaken the machine. And when the machine wakes up, it works until it solves the problem. Anger at Doug's reaction, his jealousy that I was having fun with my girlfriend, and my own growing curiosity took over. I let a man sleep with me, and it was just sex. We didn't make love, there was no tenderness, it was just sex. We both knew why we went to his car. He got his, I got mine. It was fun, it satisfied a need, and that was that. For most of our life together, making love to Doug left me emotionally drained. We lay together, just enjoying the moment. The sex with Matt was over, and I just wanted to get dressed and go home. It was a week before Doug found me with him at the bar. That night, when I felt someone tug on my wedding ring and snapped back to reality, I initially thought Matt was trying to steal it. When I opened my eyes and saw Doug putting my ring in his pocket and then taking off his own gold wedding chain and throwing it on the table, it was like my whole world had collapsed. I couldn't understand what was happening. My mind simply could not accept what was unfolding before my eyes. The last look I saw on Doug's face was filled with incredible pain. I've heard the expression, heartbroken, all my life, but this was the only time I actually saw it. And now, no matter what happens in my life, I cannot forget this moment. He will always haunt me. Somehow I came to my senses, found Doug's ring, and left the booth, heading towards the exit of the bar. Rachel stopped me on the way out and tried to talk to me. She wanted me to calm down before she got behind the wheel and possibly killed herself or someone else in her rush to get home. I couldn't hold on any longer and just sat in my car and burst into tears. I don't know how long I spent there, but it was too long. Every second I sat there was wasted time that I could have spent catching up with Doug. When I finally tried to call him, all I heard was a voicemail. I don't know how many times I called or texted that night. I'm not even sure what exactly I said or wrote. And then, when he finally called me, I did probably the stupidest thing in my life. And considering that I am the same idiot that her husband caught, then it was really very stupid, wasn't it? By this point, I had been repeating all these tired excuses to myself for so long that when I had the chance to throw myself at his feet and just beg for a second chance, I just repeated all these cliches to him instead. I knew this man as well as you can know someone. I knew how he thought, and I knew, or at least should have known, that I only had one chance to explain myself and take the blame for my behavior. Instead, I repeated to him the hackneyed phrases from the Fallen Woman's Manual. I realized that everything was over between us after the first stupid answer to his question, but I simply could not realize how much I had destroyed us. Looking back, he was right. We were done well before that fateful night. We ended when it became all about me. My third person. To the outside world, it is no different from my second person. But I hate it. I hate what it symbolizes. I hate what it shows me in the reflection. Doug would have seen the irony here. I finally have the face and body I've dreamed of, but the reflection I see is the ugliest thing possible. I see a shallow, vain, and deceitful woman who used the man who loved her to get what she always wanted. The irony is that all I want now is what I so easily threw away. I want him to look at me and tell me that I am beautiful, that he loves me. But now when he looks at me, I see nothing. At first he looked with pain, and then often simply left as soon as we crossed paths. Now he just looks right through me. I'm nothing to him, just a ghost. Can you imagine what this is like? I would rather have him get angry and hurt me than just look past me. A physical beating would be better than an emotional slap every time he doesn't even react to my presence. This face still receives compliments, still attracts the gaze of men, still causes hatred from women. But they don't know what happens to me every time someone tells me I'm beautiful or tries to flirt with me. Every compliment, every drink sent to me, every attempt at flirting feels like a slap in the face. Each one reminds me of what I did to him. Each of them reminds me of how empty and vain I am inside under this beautiful mask. I don't go anywhere anymore. I just can't. The last time I got so drunk, I don't remember leaving the bar or getting home. I just remember hearing myself sob as my eyes began to focus again. I remember thinking that I must be as ugly on the outside as I was on the inside. This was right before I passed out. Waking up on a cold tiled floor is always bad. This is my life now. I go to work, come home, and try to live. I don't go out because I can't stand it when people look at me. Either they don't know me and are trying to flirt, or they know me and look at me like I'm dirt under their feet. Why did I do all this? I still don't know. I asked my therapist and she said, "That's the $64,000 question." I hope she's just quoting an old line and not giving the real price. I don't know all the answers yet, but I can say one thing. Vanity and stupidity rank very high on this list. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.